G'day, I'm Paul. So this is a car that you guys have requested we review on a number of occasions, and we've finally got our hands on one. It's called the Haval H6. This thing here competes with things like the Toyota RAV4, the Mazda CX-5, the Hyundai Tucson. This one here is the mid-specification Lux version. It's priced at just under $34,000, but if that's too expensive, the whole range kicks off at just under 31 grand. Today we're going to do a detailed review of this car. So if you do want to skip ahead to other parts of the review, you can use the time codes that are up on the screen, or if you're on YouTube, scroll down and there are chapters below. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon, because that's going to tell you every single time we review something new. Okay, let's talk exterior. You've got 6 external colors to pick from. All but white is an additional $495. Now, what about the design? I actually think it looks pretty good. I don't mean this to sound offensive, but Chinese cars sometimes look like copies of other cars, whereas this, I think it stands on its own 2 feet. They haven't had to lean on any other cars for their design inspiration. I think that's a really good thing. You've got a giant grille up the front here with a chrome finish. It's like a bit of a shadow chrome finish. Big Haval brand just there. Camera down the front. I think the design really just stands out on the road, and it looks very premium. It certainly looks and feels like it's worth a whole lot more than its asking price. You've got a set of full LED headlights over here with LED daytime running lights, LED fog lights as well. Come around to the side, we have 18-inch alloy wheels. The design, look, it's pretty sort of straightforward. You've got that sort of chromey look on the outside and then the graphite look on the inside there. Fairly chubby profile on the tyre as well, which means it should ride pretty well. Plastic wheel arches there to signify that, you know, you're driving an SUV. You need everyone to know. Indicator built into that wing mirror with a little camera there for the 360 camera. You've got lashings of chrome down the bottom, then along this sort of glass house with roof rails, privacy glass, and come around to the back. So you've got a shark fin aerial up the top there, a little sort of boot lip spoiler here. One of the first things I noticed when these first hit the road was this big LED strip along the back there. Looks quite imposing and definitely makes this stand out at night time. You've got big Haval branding along the back there, GWM, which is Great Wall Motors, and then over here the model designation and the engine, because this is the 2-litre petrol. Now here's an interesting thing. This looks big, and that's because it is. It's about 100 millimeters longer than a Mazda CX-5. So you get the impression that it does feel a lot bigger, and yeah, when you put the tape measure against it, it is actually significantly bigger than a lot of the competitors in this segment. Okay, so we're inside the H6. We will start with the key. Here it is. You've got a panic button, lock, boot, unlock, and then Haval along the back there. It's a proximity sensing key, so you just leave that in your pocket. And once you're inside, you have a push button start here. Okay, so what about the interior layout, the design? I think this looks really nice. It looks very premium, and I don't know, I keep going back to the price, and it just seems like you're getting a lot of value for money here. You look at these screens that have only just really come into fashion now with things like the new Hyundai Tucson, and I think that they've gone to a lot of effort to make sure that these materials all look and feel premium to the touch, despite the fact this not having a really premium price tag. Not a huge fan of the piano black sort of all along there, but it's fairly minimal in terms of its use, so that all looks good. In terms of our touch points, that's not too bad, and then not too bad over there as well. How soft are they? Well, we've got our durometer. We've tested the main surfaces in this cabin. If you want to see how this car compares to others we've tested before, have a look at the link in the description. Now, what about build quality? Let's have a look. That all feels really good. And what about the door? That sounds really good. It feels very European. How did that happen? Okay. Moving on to infotainment, and there are 2 screens here. So you've got a 10.25-inch screen here on the left, and then a 10.25-inch screen ahead of the driver. I'll run you through both of those, but let's start over here with infotainment. It does look very sharp, and it's very quick, and it just does everything really impressively, and I wasn't expecting something like this in this type of car. So it's got this section here, which is your home screen. It's divided into 3 parts. You've got radio, which includes AM and FM, no DAB digital radio, unfortunately. You have this central section, which is your Bluetooth streaming. Then you have climate over to the right. One more swipe brings you over to the seat heaters and also drive mode selection. You can also swipe down from the top if you want to access some of the shortcuts for your brightness and volume. Over here, we have the ability to go through all the different menu sections, and I'll run you through the smartphone mirroring. It has both Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. They're both wired. So this is what Apple CarPlay looks like. So full screen integration. That's fairly quick, a tiny bit laggy, but for the most part, that's not too bad. And this is what Android Auto looks like. So there you go, same thing, full screen integration, nice and sharp and quick. Actually, not quite quick. You can see it's just a tiny bit laggy there, but for the most part, that's fine. It won't be too much of a drama. And then also on the steering wheel, you have a voice recognition button that allows you to communicate with your phone when it is paired. And then in terms of sound, you have an 8-speaker sound system. It's okay, nothing spectacular. Now, what about the screen ahead of the driver? So I mentioned earlier, another 10.25-inch display. This one comes with all the basic functions you'd expect. You've got a tire pressure gauge, you have all your safety systems. Now, the interesting thing is you can change the theme here, and currently there's this space theme with like the Earth revolving around there. You can pop it onto another one called, called the Space Fold. So it changes into that theme. You'll see it come up here. Look at that. So it is pretty cool that they've designed this to look so interesting. And I think they've put a lot of effort into that. And then you can flick between each of those different screens just by using the steering wheel controls here. So it's a pretty cool setup and nice to see in this sort of car. Okay, let's talk about safety. So there is no safety rating just yet. This car is yet to be crash tested. I know that it's coming up, but just keep that in mind before you purchase. Other safety features include autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist detection. You've got an auto dimming rear vision mirror. You have lane departure warning and a lane keeping assistant. You have a semi-autonomous steering function. Doesn't really work that well. It has also this mode when it is in its radar cruise control where it slows down for corners, but it does it really aggressively. And it just needs a lot of work, that stuff. But you do get radar cruise control with the stalk down here. You have a blind spot monitor built into that wing mirror. And you also have a 360 camera with both front and rear parking sensors. And I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so you get a 3D view. And have a look at this. If I open my door and then close it, how cool is that? So it actually animates all of that. You can spin that around yourself. So the top-down view is a little bit pixelated, but if you go to the 2D view, it's actually quite high resolution, quite sharp. You can see those lines there move with the steering. Then you've got a number of other views you can select. So rear tires just there for parking. You've got a wide-angle view of the rear. And what you can also do is turn some of these lines on and off. So yeah, a whole bunch of really cool options there, and that all comes standard, which is pretty nice. Moving on to practicality, and we'll start with your phone connectivity. So you've got one USB port down there, another one on this side, 12 volts on this side as well. There's also one more USB port up the top here, and that is for your dash cam. This car misses out on wireless phone charging. It comes standard on the top spec, so you do have a place there for your phone, but it won't actually charge or do anything like that. You can also pop your phone down here as well. There's plenty of storage options. Now let's go to our coffee cup. You think to yourself, wow, that just moves around everywhere, but you've got this little thing that pops out there and allows you to put your drinks in, and then it stops them sort of moving around too much. Same story with your bottle. Just slide that up and it holds your bottle in position. Got storage inside the doors. I'll try our big bottle inside the door. I'll see if it holds that. Yeah, kind of. If you sort of wedge it in there, it kind of holds it. In terms of other storage, you have this console here. That is huge. It's nice and deep. Plenty of storage space there. You also have this area down the bottom. Glove box, let's have a look. Hey, that's reasonably sized. That's not too bad. And finally, you have a sunglasses holder up the top here. Moving on to comfort, you have dual zone automatic climate control. You also have heated seats for the first row. The seats themselves, now these are interesting. The design's kind of cool. I like this sort of wedged out, cut out section. The white stitching on the black looks pretty nice as well. They just don't really hug you in. They've got heaps of room either side, and the bottom is a bit flat. And in terms of the adjustment, the driver's seat is fully electrically adjustable, so you can go forwards, backwards. You can move that backrest. You can get your bolster out as well. You can't lift the base up though, and I find that it's sometimes a little tricky to find a comfortable driving position. The passenger seat is fully manually adjustable. Then in terms of the steering, you can go up and down, in and out as well, so plenty of adjustability there. And finally, our reach test. Easy to reach all the shortcut buttons there, and that is easy to reach as well. Second row, there is a surprising amount of leg room here. Have a look at this. I have loads of knee room, toe room is good, and headroom is excellent. And that's despite the fact this seat is pretty much all the way back. So there is a heap of room here. You've got air vents here for the kids to keep them happy, 2 USB charging points, the same seat design with that sculpted cutout. You've got a center armrest here with 2 cup holders. So fits the bottles in nicely, and then you've got rubber teeth as well. Can't fit these in the doors though. There's sort of nowhere to really put them, which is a little bit disappointing. And you've got 2 mat pockets here. Finally, 2 ISOFIX points on the outboard seats with 3 top tether points. So what about cargo space? Well, it's actually a pretty impressive setup. You have 600 litres of cargo space available just in its standard trim here. You'll notice here with the cargo floor, beneath it you have a space saver spare tyre, but it's a dual tiered floor, so you can drop that down to give you a little bit of extra space, or it gives you a hidey hole if you have it up the top, so you can't see your contents from the outside. You've got storage off to the sides here, LED lights, and then I'll pop this in. See how that goes. Look at that, no dramas at all. That is a really decently sized boot. And then if you do want to expand the space a little more, you can drop your second row, and that expands the space to a little under 1,500 litres, but I would like to see releases off to the side here because it is a fair stretch to actually reach those. Okay, we've hit the road in the Haval H6. Now, powering this exclusively across the range is a 2-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder petrol engine, makes 150 kilowatts of power and 320 newton meters of torque. You can get this as an all-wheel drive, but only in the top spec. The rest of the range is front-wheel drive only. All of that torque is sent through a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission. Now, you know how I feel about dual-clutch transmissions. Let's see what this is like from a standing start. I did notice earlier it does some really funny stuff if you get on the throttle a little too hard. That's not very good. Let me try that again. Yeah, it is just super lurchy. And then if you have any lock on, it just arcs up the wheels. And you end up doing burnouts, which I just think is a little antisocial, and I think that throttle just needs a little bit of calibration. But what's it like once it's moving? We'll give it just a little punch here. It actually feels really good, even when you go from a low speed. So I'll just dial back the speed here to something much slower, and just give it a punch from a bit of a standing start. It's spinning the wheels now as well. It actually has a fair bit of pickup. Like it's surprising. I wasn't expecting it to be as punchy, because when you look at those numbers on paper, 320 newton meters of torque is not the most amount of torque in the world, but it really does pick up and go nicely. And we'll try punching it now just while we're on the move. Gearbox is okay. It's not very quick to respond. So it just takes a little while to do anything, despite the fact it is a dual clutch. Often manufacturers will use those for fuel economy as opposed to performance gains. Now, speaking about fuel economy, Haval claims a combined fuel efficiency of 7.4 litres per 100 Ks. Let's have a look at what we're sitting on at the moment. 9.3, so it is higher than that figure, but there are a few caveats here. Just because of the weather and what it's like today, we had to switch up our filming. So we've done a lot of the performance driving for the outside shots earlier in the day. So instead of just being driven on the highway, this car's had a little bit of a performance run. So given that figure isn't actually too bad. I think if you're doing predominantly highway driving and taking it fairly easy, you should actually get quite close to that figure. And then in terms of the other drive modes, you've got normal, sport, eco, snow. Then you can also configure your steering mode, so you can go comfort, sport, light. It really does have a raft of controls here that you can play with. Thankfully, all of these electronic aids, such as the lane keeping assistant and all the other things that beep at you, can be switched off, and they stay off as well. I turned off the lane keeping assistant this morning and it hasn't come back on, which is really good news. Now, what's the ride like? Well, it is really soft. It's very floaty and it feels very luxury, but there is a bit of an issue, and I'm going to just accelerate a little bit here so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. We've got our continuous undulations here, and this is a real good test of body control as speeds pick up. So now I'm doing about 120 here. We'll hit these bumps, and bang, on the way down there, we're bottoming out, and that's at just above legal highway speed here in Victoria. You can go that quick in other states. It really does lack body control at that top end. So while it is nice in and around town, it really does feel like it needs a bit of work done to it on the ride and handling. It feels like they've just taken this straight from China, where I suspect it is just a lot of highway driving and this type of ride is acceptable. But here it really is, I don't know, it's Not quite sick inducing, but it makes you feel a little queasy if you are on a sort of faster stretch of windy roads. You feel like the thing is porpoising and it feels like a bit of a boat when you really start to get into those corners. Now, speaking of getting into those corners, let's pop it into sport mode just to see what it's like through our little circuit here. Funny thing is, it puts the hazard lights on so people around you know that it's in sport mode. We'll tip it into this corner. Look, it's got a fair bit of body roll there, and if I lean on the throttle, it picks up and goes. That's the funny thing. It's sort of not really overly dynamic, but it feels nice and punchy behind the wheel. It even has a little bit of an engine note to it as well, which I think is pretty cool. Now, we don't have an official 0 to 100 time from Haval, but we've put it up against our stopwatch, and this is how it went. We had traction control kick in just a little bit there, so I'm going to switch that off and we'll try that once more, see if it's any quicker. Let's talk visibility. So out the front here, it is good. I have really great visibility across the front of the car. I can see the edges of it as well. The wing mirrors are really big, so I can clearly see down the sides there. You've also got a blind spot monitor built into those. Visibility out the rear isn't great. The window is very narrow, and from where I'm sitting here, I just see the top edge of the road. I really don't see too much as you sort of venture down the back of the car. So I think that window really needs to increase in size to improve that rearward visibility. And what about road noise? Well, this is a coarse chip section of road. As the speed picks up, you do get a bit more of it translating into the cabin, but for the most part, it's a really quiet environment. Today's quite windy outside, and I'm not hearing a great deal of wind noise coming into the cabin. So it's a big tick there in terms of refinement. What about your ground clearance? So front wheel drive, you're not going to be going off road, but you do have 170 millimeters of ground clearance. It'll get you over very minor obstacles. And then in terms of towing capacity, you have a 2,000 kilogram braked towing capacity. Okay, so the Haval H6, what do I reckon? Look, it did surprise me. I was pretty impressed with it, and look, I can understand why it's $20,000 cheaper than something like, I don't know, the Hyundai Tucson we're testing today. It's in that class because ultimately it doesn't have the body control. It's not quite as refined, and you can feel that there's probably still a little bit more work to be done. But if that's not an issue for you, it's $20,000 cheaper, and it comes with virtually everything you find in the more expensive cars in this segment. It has loads of room inside, the engine's really punchy, and it does the sort of city run very easily and comes with a competitive warranty as well. So look, while I understand that it's not quite there yet in terms of being competitive as a driver's car, it does everything else well enough. And I can't say that spending like $20,000 for the Tucson is really going to revolutionize your driving experience. It is worth pointing out as well that this has not been crash tested yet. So I would not be buying it until they have done a crash test, because we don't know how it's going to perform compared to some of the more established players in the segment. So keep that in mind. But if you have bought one, what's it been like, and what's it like long term? I'm really keen to hear from you owners out there. So let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you did enjoy this video, please make sure you like it and share it with your mates. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel so you can find out every single time we drive something new. But until next time, drive safely.